Hello, I'm gonna teach you how to unpack and look at the maps of Prince of Persia in Blender. The first thing you're gonna need is Blender that you can download at blender.org/download. We're gonna be using version 2.79. If the version in this page is not 2.79, you can always download an earlier version hidden previous versions at the bottom of the page. Download Blender, install it, and make note of the directory you installed it in. It's going to be necessary for later. Next thing, in speedrun.com/pop/sot resources, which you can access by clicking here, we're going to get extracting POP maps. It's a RAR archive, and download it anywhere in your computer. Once you've done this, we got everything we need. Next step is going to be going into your Prince of Persia directory. You're going to locate the file prince.bf. Okay, you're going to want to copy that file because this is where all the information is and what we're going to be extracting. However, if we extract it directly in here, this is going to get cluttered with a lot of files that we do not want to have here. So instead, I'm going to make a little folder here. And I'm gonna paste the prince.bf. Next thing, we're gonna open the archive with your archiving tool of preference. Here you can see five files and four files and one folder. Extract them directly into the folder. And next thing we're gonna go is take the Persian rag and execute it as administrator. This is important because otherwise it's not going to extract it properly. So the next thing is go into the directory where you copied the prince.bf file, which is right here. Open it. Now just select all, click on the first one, shift end, and click extract. This will take a little bit and it will extract all the binary files and the icon into the bins folder. Now it says it's extracted, we can close this, and in bins there is all that we need. Now there are two files that we need to remove from the folder because they will make the decompressor crash. These files are version tag.bin, which is here, version tag.bin, and wallinfo.bin. Okay, so we take these ones, cutting them, pasting them somewhere else, and now you should have all the bins in here. Next thing, take jpack.exe, paste it into bins, and execute it normally, and it should run the decompression algorithm on all the files in the directory. This will take also a little bit of time. If everything's gone correctly, here it should say all done, enjoy. Otherwise, it means that your program has crashed and you've missed one of the files that we didn't want. So one of the things that I like to do now is order all the files by the type so that we can go straight to the DEC files. The DEC files are the files that we have decompressed and move them into a new folder. So that way, when we're using Blender, we don't need to look very far into the subtree directory. And now we're only gonna be opening files that contain WoW in the name, like this ones. So another thing you can do is select all the WoW files and throw them into a folder themselves. By doing this, later when we are browsing the files with Blender, there are a lot of files. So by doing this, it's going to be a little bit easier to find the files that you want in Blender. Okay, so now we have all the files ready to be opened in Blender, but Blender doesn't know how to open these files yet. So what you are going to do is go to your Blender install directory, which usually is something along the lines of C program files, Blender Foundation, Blender, and here it is. Now you go into the version, scripts, add-ons, and here are all the add-ons of Blender. And from the archives that we extracted earlier, we should have here this folder called IO Sin POP. So we're going to copy that and put it into the Blender add-ons folder, and that should be that. So now we're ready to open Blender. Now the first thing you want to do, if you have never used Blender before, is go into File, User Preferences, Input, and here in Select With, click Left, because by default, Blender selection is with the right mouse button, which is absolutely disgusting. So most people I know that use Blender, and myself included, use the left button to select. Once you've changed that into left, click Save User Settings. That way the change will be permanent. Now go into Add-ons and look for POP, and here should appear Import POP Map. You click that and you can save user settings to have it always enabled. And if you're not, if you're using Blender for other things and you don't want to have it always enabled, you just click it and then close this window. Okay, so in order to use Blender, it is a little bit unintuitive, and most of the interface doesn't give you much to work with. So what you want to do is press the spacebar, and this will bring up this menu. And this menu is basically the interface of Blender. Anything that Blender can do is in this menu. Okay, so for example, if we want to delete an object, here it is. We write delete and it appears here. And it also tells you the shortcut for it, which then you can press, and it will tell you, it will ask you if you want to delete it. And we do want to delete this cube, otherwise it's going to be in the way when we import things. Okay, the next thing, now that we have this setup, is importing the maps. So we go File, Import, POP, WO, then go to the directory where we extracted all the map information, which is here, right? These are all the maps, plus the models of the enemies and all things. So what you want to do is open a map. Let's say, where is it? This one, the last map. And it takes a little bit to load, but it loads. Okay, so now you will see there is here this, and where is the map? Well, the rest of the map is over there. It's in different coordinates, and I will tell you how to get there in a moment. But first of all, basic navigation. In Blender, you move the camera pressing the middle mouse button. Okay, if you just press it, you will rotate your view around the center of the view. This right here, this circle with red and white stripes, is the cursor in Blender. Okay, and that's going to be important in a moment. If you ever get lost in Blender, let's say you move the camera and you have no idea where you are, press space and choose cursor, snap cursor to center. That will, let me do that again, snap cursor to center. That will bring the cursor to the center of the whole thing. Then you can do view cursor, center view to cursor. That will bring you here, and now you can reorient yourself. Next thing, in order to move, you can zoom in and out with the scroll wheel, and you can pan the camera using shift and middle click, like that. You can move sideways using that. Control middle mouse button will move the camera forward and backwards. This is different than zoom in, by the way. Lastly, you can look for view navigation, and this will allow you to move freely through the scene. You can use WASD to move around, you can use the mouse to look around, and you can use Q and E to move upwards and forwards. You can also press Shift while moving to move faster, or press Alt to move slower. You can also change the speed by scrolling the mouse wheel. By pressing left mouse, the camera will stay where you left it during this free movement. Otherwise, if you press right mouse button, the camera will reset to the place it was before doing the free movement. Alright, so now we want to look at our things in the scene, right? So what we do is we can click on them, on any of it in the distance, then we go view, select, view selected, and we've come to here. Now if you want to see the proper game models, you click down here, texture, and this will show the models with their textures, and I find this to be a little bit more intuitive than, you know, normal viewing. So when you have something selected in Blender, it has a green outline, and this is important if you are trying to figure out where a trigger is, for example. So where do you see the properties of something that you have selected? Well, first of all, what you have selected appears somewhere in here in this hierarchy in white, but you don't need to use this at all for most of the things that we're going to do. If you want to see the properties of whatever you have selected, you click this little plus button up here, and this will bring you the information about the location and the size of the object. The size of the object, even if it's not a cube, is the size of a cube that encompasses the whole object, okay? And it's measured from the center, I believe. This is true for all triggers that I've found yet. This is the exact location, and these are the dimensions from the center, meaning that this bottom line here is 2.5 units, a little bit more over 22.5 units below 11, so it would be 9 point something, while the top line here, this one, would be at 13.7 or something like that. And you can, by pressing A, you can select all the objects in the scene, and by pressing X you can delete them all in case you want to import a new model. And then you just go back to the cursor, view to the cursor, and here we are, and everything is empty. So now we can import a different map, and not only you can import one map, you can import multiple maps. That's going to be just useful, let's say. Now we go view to selection. If we zoom in, there you go. So this is the trigger for the dagger. Here are the coordinates, and it's a perfect cube of 4 by 4 by 4. Since the dimensions come from the center, the cube is 4 by 4 by 4. And that's basically it. And you can load multiple maps, as I've said. Import, wow. Yeah, and that just loaded the, wow, I'm lost. So this is the corridor after dagger. Oh yeah, this is the new thing that we imported. This corridor here. See this corridor? This is what we just imported. And that's it. Hope this was helpful.